I have a question here about how to get accurate intuition and how to know whether your inner guidance is coming from a valid source or whether it's influenced by your own psychology. And it's a very important question because there simply comes a point on the spiritual path where you are not going to go beyond a certain level unless you start getting guidance from within. And from within, I don't mean from your own mind, I mean from your higher self and from your spiritual teachers, the Ascended Masters. And so the question is, of course, how can you know whether what you get is actually coming from a higher source, or whether it's coming from a lower source, or whether you are misinterpreting what's coming, or whether you're interpreting it accurately. So you could say it's one of the most important issues we're dealing with as we walk the spiritual path. Now the question is very, very long, so I'm not going to read all of it. It will be in the description. But I'm going to read part of it just to give you a flavor of what the person is asking. My question is about discernment. I have always struggled to know which voices were my subconscious selves, expressions of illusions, fears, or false desires, which were just my interpretation of a formless message of hope, love, light, and which were exactly the specific content I needed to hear, understand, and believe. Sometimes the messages are so strong there is no doubt, but more often it is subtle. I've had many experiences where I know I was given true knowledge, even being led to do or say something which was eventually backed up by logical proof, but I have also had experiences where I later realized I had deceived myself. I believe there is a potential danger in my misinterpretations, but I also believe this type of communication can greatly benefit myself and others if done correctly. There was a long period that my confusion was very discouraging and I gave up on this ability, but I now believe engaging with Christ in this way is important to fulfilling my life plan. And so let's talk about intuition. Let me first say, I have done another video about this topic, and the title is, How Do I Get Accurate Intuition? So if you're interested in the topic, I recommend you watch that one also. But I'll give some talks here that I think are related to what the person is asking. And so first, let's clarify the situation we're in here on Earth. We are in a very difficult situation because we have so many things pulling on us from outside our minds. There is other people pulling on us. There are the mass consciousness. There are lower forces, darker forces that are pulling on us. But then, as if that wasn't enough, we have inner forces that are pulling on us, namely what I in many of my videos are called the subconscious selves, the unresolved psychology that is in the identity level of the mind, the mental level of the mind, the emotional level of the mind. And we have the subconscious selves, reactionary patterns we created over a long period of time, and they pull on us. So, and they're also projecting at us. And when it comes to the spiritual path, they are projecting at us that certain things should happen, or certain things shouldn't happen, or we are very important, or we have an important role to play in the world, and this and that. So we are in a difficult situation. It's kind of like you can say that intuitive communication is like a radio. Perhaps there are many people today who never even used a radio because it's all over the internet. But in the old days, you had this radio, and you had a dial you could turn to tune into whatever station you wanted to listen to. And sometimes there was so much static that it was very hard to tune into the exact station. And sometimes you could even hear two stations at once. So there was a lot of noise and a lot of static. And that's kind of how it is with intuitive communication. So the first task really is to cut down on the noise, the static. And you do that, and I said that in the other video as well, by invoking spiritual protection from the Ascended Masters, invoking the violet flame to transmute energy that's stored in your emotional, mental, and identity bodies, and so that you clear your energy field as much as possible. Because the clearer your energy field is, the less you're going to be susceptible to the noise from the outside and even the noise from the inside. And the more of a chance is that you can have a a clear line through to a higher realm. So that's one thing, just a very practical thing. But the other thing I would say here is that you need to step back and consider what's your basic approach to the spiritual path, to spiritual growth. What is it you seek to get out of it? And this is especially relating to having some kind of desire or ambition to be special, to do something important, to do something that makes a decisive difference in the world. And I look back at myself, I look back at the many people that I have met and interacted with on the spiritual path over the last 48 years, and I can see that there's a clear tendency that as spiritual people we want to do something important. And I address this to some degree in my whole playlist about the avatar psychology, because many of us came to Earth to have a positive impact on Earth. And that gives us sort of a desire to produce some kind of decisive results on Earth. And this can very well deceive us, and this can very well block us from getting accurate communication from a higher source. So now we need to realize that intuitive communication, it's basically in communication that comes from outside your own mind. So it's not your subconscious selves, your subconscious desires, your subconscious ambitions. It doesn't come from there. It comes from a source that's outside your own mind, which is not other people. It's in a higher vibrational realm. But now we need to realize, as I said, there are 3 levels of the mind, but there are also 3 higher levels of the entire world we're in. So beyond the purely physical, material level, our body and the senses, there's the emotional realm, the mental realm, the identity realm, and then beyond that, the spiritual. So in the emotional, mental, and identity realms, there are beings. And some of these beings are presenting themselves as spiritual teachers, as our guides. And they present themselves as being benign, as wanting to help us grow, or help us fulfill our mission in life, whatever it may be. They're very good at tuning into you individually and sensing what your desires and ambitions are, and then giving you impulses or messages that validate your ambitions. I've seen this happen many times over the years. And I'm not saying that these are all malicious. Some of them are relatively benign. But the problem with it is they are not ascended. That means 2 things. First of all, they don't have the vision, the knowledge, the clarity that ascended masters have. Because the ascended masters have ascended, they are in the spiritual realm. The other thing is, these beings, there's a reason why they're still in the identity, mental, emotional realm. That is, that they haven't resolved something in their psychology, and that's why they haven't ascended, they haven't become self-sufficient, which means they still need to get some energy from this world. They need to get energy horizontally instead of vertically. It doesn't mean they're all completely cut off, but it does mean that they need to get some energy from people, and one of the ways to get it is to work with you, give you the impression that you are working with a true guidance, and you put your attention on it, and therefore you give them energy. So you have to be aware of this, because you have to make a decision at some point. Where do you want to get your guidance from? And many years ago, it was back in the early 1980s, 1984 probably, I really started looking into Ascended Master teachings, and there came a point where I just intuitively saw why Ascended Masters are so important. And what I saw was they cannot be corrupted by anything on earth. So you have all of these human opinions, human interpretations, ideologies, viewpoints, religions, all of this stuff. All of these very subtle arguments. This is right, that is wrong, all this kind of stuff. And it was like I just saw how human beings are involved in this total quagmire of these conflicting viewpoints, being pulled in all kinds of directions. And some of them just seek to create chaos. And I saw that in contrast to all this, the Ascended Masters, they have transcended all of that, the human opinions, the human power struggles, and they're incorruptible from this human level. They can't be corrupted by anything on earth. And that's why they can give us valid guidance. So even then I realized this is the only place I want guidance from. I don't want it from any lower sources. And so if you don't make that clear, conscious decision, you're very likely to open yourself up to guidance from the emotional, mental, and low identity realms. Because you have certain of this, what I call the unresolved psychology, the subconscious selves. And some of these selves have a certain ambition. I've said before that, the basic separate self we have is what we can call the ego, and it's based on this idea that you're a separate being. It's based on a sense of loss, and therefore the ego is always trying to compensate by doing something in this world. So there's a part of your ego that wants you to somehow be special in order to compensate for the loss of your connection to your higher self. And so take note of what I'm saying. The ego is based on the loss of connection to your higher self and the Ascended Masters. In other words, you lost connection to the genuine source of intuitive guidance. The ego is based on this loss. Therefore, the ego can never discern what is valid guidance and what is not. Because the ego has a worldly ambition to make you seem special in this world by doing something that nobody else can do. By doing something that makes you a savior, for example, or bringing forth some new thing that nobody else can do. So the ego constantly wants this, and that means if you are not recognizing this, it's very likely that you will attract to yourself some force from the mental realm, for example, that will seemingly validate and reinforce that worldly ambition. And I've seen this happen over the years to quite a few people. I've also seen many spiritual people who didn't get caught in this because either they didn't have such a strong ambition to do something in the world, or they had discernment enough to realize that there is a problem there, a potential problem. So, but I have seen a few, quite a few, but not thousands, but I mean quite a few people who got trapped by this worldly ambition. And you can get yourself into all kinds of hot water, blind alleys, because what typically happens is that you are led to believe that you have to do something special. And then you take steps in that direction. And it's like there comes a point of no return where now you're trapped by the ambition. And the only way you can see forward is to keep going in the same direction. And that means you become more and more unbalanced, more and more extreme, until something crashes. And a person even mentions this, probably in a milder form, that I had many experiences where I know I was given true knowledge, but I also had experiences where I later realized I had deceived myself. And there was a long period that my confusion was very discouraging, and I gave up on this ability. So you see how this is what often happens to people. You're thinking you're getting accurate guidance and intuition, and it leads you to do certain things, and then the consequences eventually catch up with you, and now you feel you have gotten inaccurate information. And I actually have a breakthrough video where I talk about whether your intuition could be wrong. And so you might want to watch that also if you have experienced this. So what I'm saying is that you have to be aware of this dynamic of the ego. The ego wants to be special in this world. But the spiritual path is about being free of anything in this world that is pulling you to stay in this world. You see what I'm saying? It's like the ego can only use the things of this world, but the spiritual path really is about rising above all of these attachments that you have to things in this world. Now, saying this, it is very important to realize, of course, as I've talked about in many videos, we all have a life plan. And part of that life plan is to resolve psychology, and part of it is many of us have a gift to give to the world. So I'm not saying that you should give up all ambition. What I'm saying is that as you grow on the path, you have to learn to discern between the ego's ambition and what is not really an ambition because it comes from your life plan, comes from your higher self and your spiritual teachers. So many people have something important they can do in the world, but in order to do it, you have to overcome the unresolved psychology, and that includes this worldly ambition of the ego. Right? So what we can basically say here is that the ego and a number of subconscious selves, they have this worldly ambition, and this is pulling you away from getting accurate intuition. So the real way to get accurate intuition is to resolve this psychology, which if you have something important to do, this is the initial stage of your life plan, is to resolve the psychology that blocks you from giving your gift to the world. So you need to look at this, and I've given quite a few teachings on the subconscious selves. I have the playlist about avatar psychology, and quite a few breakthrough videos where I talk about this. So you can always take those teachings and do what you can do there to resolve this psychology. But the other thing I will say is that when I look back, the key word to getting inner guidance is balance. And I know it's a difficult concept for people, because what does that mean exactly? But just to give you some feel for it. I always had a sense that I can't allow myself to go too far into any extreme. And I always had a sense that even when it comes to intuition, I can't shut off my rational mind. So in other words, I'm getting intuitive. I've always seen the value of intuitive guidance, but I've also always seen the need to balance it with the rational mind. Is it really accurate what I'm getting? Is it really likely? So I had, for example, somebody I was involved with for a while who believed she was getting inner guidance. And but she believed that in order to get this guidance, she had to use this technique of muscle testing, which is called kinesiology, where you use a muscle response. Yes, the muscles are strong. No, the muscles are weak. And she believed that was the only way she could get guidance. And she also believed that whatever she got through this was accurate. So what I'm saying is, you can look at spiritual people and you can see that some people are so eager to get guidance that they use these kind of methods, what I call divination. It can be kinesiology, it can be tarot readings, going to a psychic, astrology, numerology, this or that. All kinds of things where you're thinking that you can use some mechanical process or device to get intuitive guidance. And for me, this has always I've always seen it as not credible. And this is my rational mind that says, why would I need some mechanical process or device here in the physical octave to get guidance from a higher source, a source that's beyond the material world? That never made sense to me. Then you can also look at what exactly guidance are you getting. So this person who was using muscle testing, she believed she had gotten this guidance that she needed to move to New York, and she needed to create a spiritual academy there. And this had to be done in a specific place. And she had to build this very big, elaborate building that was 7 stories tall corresponding to 7 levels of the spiritual path. But it so happened, and you could find this on the internet, that this particular area where she had gotten her guidance to build this building, there was a restriction. You couldn't build anything more than 2 stories tall. And the likelihood that she could get an exception for this was basically non-existent. So that's what I'm saying. She got an inner guidance that simply wasn't accurate. It wasn't credible. It wasn't from a higher source. And just by a little bit of rational thinking, you could see that it couldn't be accurate. Then she also got, she realized it would cost a lot of money to build this building. But then she got inner guidance that she had to buy a lottery ticket. And so she bought it, and she was told that she was going to win enough money to build this building. So she bought a lottery ticket, waited till the day of the drawing, and didn't win. But then she got the guidance, stay another week, buy another lottery ticket. And again, she didn't win. So what I'm saying is, from my logical, rational mind, you can see that it's not very likely that the ascended masters would tell people, buy a lottery ticket, you're going to win enough money to build this elaborate building, which couldn't be built in the first place. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, you have to have some evaluation of whether the guidance you're getting from within is just unlikely. It's just impractical. It couldn't be practically realized. And I've seen other people who got the impression from within that they had an important mission to bring forth some new teaching, and they set themselves up as teachers, and now they attracted a following, and they had to keep going in the same direction. But because they had unresolved psychology, they started becoming more dictatorial. They couldn't handle if people questioned them. They made these elaborate promises of what would happen to people. They often got people to give them money so they could buy some piece of property, create some spiritual center there, and eventually the whole thing deteriorated. And you see this, there's a pattern in spiritual movements that they start up, attracting new people for a while, and then after a time they implode, because it wasn't accurate guidance to begin with, and there wasn't a resolution of psychology. It was based on this worldly ambition, and it just had to run its course, and then it ran out of steam. And so what I'm trying to say here is that you need to be open to getting guidance. But when you get guidance, you evaluate it with a rational mind. Is it practical? And this is something that requires a certain resolution of psychology, because basically, here's what I would say. In order to get accurate guidance, you have to be as neutral as possible. This relates to the worldly ambitions of the ego, but it also relates to, as I said, how you see the spiritual path. In other words, I met many people who have this. They haven't given up on this wish-fulfilling God that you find in the Old Testament. If you pray to God, He's going to grant you a favor, and He's going to smite your enemies and give you what you want, basically, in the Old Testament. That's the old man in the sky up there who is looking at you personally, and if he likes what you're doing or how you pray or whatever, He's going to give you what you want. That's the wish-fulfilling God. And I've seen spiritual people over the years who transfer that to the spiritual path, even to the ascended masters. And they think that if they can just find the right way, they'll get everything just the way they want it. And that again is coming from subconscious selves that will color what you can get and what you believe from your intuition. And so what I'm saying is that you can see people who are very eager to get guidance, but they don't evaluate it. They in essence let their subconscious selves evaluate the guidance or interpret the guidance. So this means that they're not, first of all, they have an ambition for what kind of guidance they want, because they want guidance that validates their view of what should happen to them personally, how important they are, what kind of situation they should have, and how much money they should make, for example, which many spiritual people are very caught up in making money because they think that, oh, if I just make enough money, then I don't have to worry about money, I can focus on my spiritual pursuits. And that's usually not the way it works out. So, so what I'm saying is, people are projecting onto their guidance, right? It's like they're not just listening for guidance. They are projecting a mental image of what they want. And this comes from the subconscious selves. And that means that these people, in most cases, cannot contact the Ascended Masters. They will be attracted to one of these sources in, for example, the mental realm. And first of all, they will get certain guidance that is adapted to their ambitions, to validate their ambitions, because it ties you to these beings. But also, your subconscious selves are going to interpret whatever guidance you get to validate what they think should or shouldn't happen. See what I'm saying? It's like you're not neutral in seeking guidance. You are projecting that you want your guidance to validate a specific view. And that's why I'm saying the essential key to getting guidance is to resolve these subconscious selves and get to a point where you can be as neutral as possible. Because the more neutral you are, the higher you can go in your guidance. And when you become sufficiently neutral, you will contact your higher self and the Ascended Masters, and you will get accurate guidance. Now, you may still have, for a period, some subconscious selves are going to try to interpret the guidance. And that's where I'm saying, that's where the rational mind can come in and say, is that really likely? Am I really the Savior who has come to be like Jesus and inaugurate a new age, and everybody's going to bow down and see how important I am? Is it really likely that I'm so important? Because what I have found over the years is that, as I said, when I was younger, I had an ambition to do something decisive. That's because I'm an avatar, as I explained in the Avatar Psychology playlist, and I wanted to feel that coming to Earth had made a difference for other people, for the world. And it was only when I saw that, when I saw the unreality of that ambition and let it go, I came to the point where I totally surrendered. And that's when I started working with the Ascended Masters in a higher capacity. That's when I started getting more accurate guidance. Because before that, my desire for guidance was colored by that. I wanted to be special in the sense that I wanted to do something that made a difference. And so what I'm saying is, if you can recognize that kind of ambition in yourself, and don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming anybody, it's quite normal. As I said, most avatars have this because we came to Earth, we were shocked by coming to Earth, and we want to find a way so it was okay after all. At least we made a difference. And there comes a point where you just have to confront that ambition and let it go. And then you can start working on the higher aspects of your life plan and working more directly with the Ascended Masters. Because now you're not seeking to project on the guidance, you are just open to receiving the guidance. And there's a huge difference between those two. So those are at least some thoughts there. And then the person actually says, the vast majority of the guidance I receive is quite innocuous, usually just ways of reinterpreting a situation that is causing me pain or some deeper insight into truth. Sometimes I am led to kindly reach out to someone I know or teach someone a spiritual principle. But lately I have been receiving guidance to more efficiently perform mundane tasks that accomplish the trivial goals of this world or to help strangers. The reason I would like to increase my confidence in this communication is because I believe I have recently received some promises about things which are important to me, and I believe it is likely that I will be asked to do some specific task in the coming future. So I would like to hone this ability to more fully step into the reason I'm here and the guidance I'm offered, but not to fool myself. And see, when I read this, it ties in for me with what I just said. I believe I have recently received some promises about things which are important to me. This is a red flag when it comes to intuition. It may be true and valid enough, but it could also very easily be influenced by the ambition of the ego and the subconscious selves, as I said, who want you to do something special in this world. So that's where you really have to be careful and look at your ambitions, your desires, the way you approach the spiritual path. I believe it is likely that I'll be asked to do some specific task in the coming future. Also, potentially a red flag. It could be the case that it's part of your life plan. I'm not saying it isn't. But again, it's so easily to have this be colored by a worldly ambition if you still have a worldly ambition. So that's why I would strongly recommend you look for that. And the way I have always approached this is that a worldly ambition is based on an attachment. It's obsessive compulsive. I want it to happen. It has to happen. And that means I can't let it go. I can't surrender it. So when I have some impulse a little bit like this, what I always do is, first of all, I look for the attachment. And if I see a clear attachment, I know there's a subconscious self. But I also just look at whatever guidance I'm getting, and then I just surrender it. I just let it go. I just say, okay, just let it go for now. Don't even think about it. Don't worry about it. Just let it go. If it comes back, fine. If it doesn't come back, no problem. So again, the more neutral you can be, the more accurate guidance you will get. Any kind of ambition will color you. And I know, again, this contradicts everything they say in the world, to be it manifestation or law of attraction or this or that. You have to have this strong desire to manifest something. But that's not the way it works if you want guidance. As I said, the more neutral you can be, the better guidance you get. And in order to be neutral, you have to be willing to give up, to surrender everything. Whatever desires you may have. And it's again this, you can ask yourself, okay, I'm a spiritual person. I have found spiritual teachings that talk about a spiritual path that leads to a higher state of consciousness. What do I see as the end goal of this path? What is going to happen when I reach these higher states of consciousness? And over the years, I have seen it in myself, I've seen it in so many other people, that people can have these very far-flung visions of how special they're going to become when they reach this ultimate state of consciousness. And it's often based on, they found a spiritual movement that started by a particular guru. And in the movement, there's this idolatry of the guru that basically he walks on water. He's basically knows everything and has reached this ultimate level of consciousness. And people, some people, not all, but some people think, oh, the same is going to happen to me when I reach that level of consciousness. And first of all, the idolatry most likely isn't accurate to begin with. And it's just what people imagine. And second of all, it's not accurate for you that you're going to be so important when you reach a higher state of consciousness. In fact, the higher your level of consciousness, the more you see the underlying wonders of all life, the less ambition you have to be special compared to other people. Ambition just fades away the higher you go on the spiritual path. I've talked about this before in terms of enlightenment. I have one video about enlightenment is overrated. It's in my non-duality playlist. And so you just become more and more neutral, not more and more superior or special. And the only way to get to that is really to give up the selves that want you to be special. In order to do that, you have to look at them. You have to see what kind of illusion are they based on. And what is the basic illusion? Well, listen to this very carefully. As I said, the ego, the subconscious selves, they can only see what is in this world. But the essence of the spiritual path is that you transcend this world, you ascend from earth. In reality, how are you going to do that? By giving up, letting go of, surrendering everything in this world, any attachment you have, any desire, any ambition. You have to let it all go in order to ascend. That is the real process of the ascension and the real process of spiritual growth. But the ego can't see this. Therefore, the ego will desperately want to create something in this world that says, if you do this, if you achieve this, you'll make it to the spiritual realm. That's the whole dynamic of the ego. And therefore, if you find in yourself that you have this view of the spiritual path, that you are going to achieve some result or ability in this world, this is coming from subconscious selves, and it will block you from getting accurate intuition from the Ascended Master's new I Am Presence. It's just that simple. I mean, I know it isn't going to sound very encouraging for people because it can be a long process to see this. Yes, but it's worth it. Because when you come to the point where you see these worldly ambitions and free yourself from them, it is the greatest freedom you can possibly experience on earth. It's not the greatest freedom in the spiritual realm, but the contrast between being colored by these worldly ambitions and escaping them is enormous. And you just feel so much more free compared to how you were before. When you're always driven by this evaluation, this judgment, this, is it going to make me special or not? Whatever evaluations you have individually. So there's more that could be said about this, but I said I have this other video about it, and I have a breakthrough video where I talk about intuition. So I think between those, there's probably enough said. Right now, there's nothing more coming to me. But again, feel free to ask me more specific questions.